let me start by saying this. Superman is very much a James Gunn movie and a Superman movie.
Mm.
And I think that if you are a James Gunn fan and have followed his work, you know exactly what to expect and what you're going to get from this movie, which for me was quite possibly the most comic book film I have seen in a very long time. And I say that because a lot of superhero movies and comic book movies often try to mainstream themselves a little bit. Now, if you've ever read a comic book, they are very silly things. And they are very silly things for good reason. In fact, it's very similar to what George Lucas used to say about the Star Wars movies. Something that has been forgotten in recent years, but Star Wars is for kids. That's why you had Ewoks, that's why you had Jar Jar Binks in the Lucas Star Wars movies. Comic books, the primary audience of comic books is still for younger readers, and so they tend to be quite silly things. And I think what James Gunn has done with this Superman is actually take all of that silliness, all of the stuff that we kind of love from comic books, and translate it to the big screen. It's something I haven't seen in a superhero movie for a very, very long time.
This feels like the first comic book movie that isn't embarrassed that it's based on a comic book.
Yeah, it's also quite possibly the first movie since Christopher Reeve where Superman is depicted like the Superman I knew reading the comics.
Mm.
Now, before we get into our review, a quick overview of what James Gunn's DCU is, right? And you get that within the opening minute of this movie. He kind of sets it up with a few title cards on screen. He sets up the fact that metahumans exist in this universe and have existed for a very long time. So nobody on the street is going, oh my god, a superhero, what is that? Why can he fly? All of that is a given. Also, superheroes exist in this world. Not just metahumans, but heroes and villains. So when a dinosaur or a crazy creature ends up attacking Metropolis, it's not a shock to the system. I think that's an incredibly clever way to start the story because it saves you from having to do all of that stuff. All of that stuff in which the mass citizenry have to react to it with newspaper headlines going, who is this strange man from outer space? It does away with everything. So you can just get into the story. And James Gunn's movie starts in the middle of the story. I haven't seen a superhero movie like this as well in a very long time. There is no setup. Apart from those title cards in the beginning, you're just into it. And the pace is relentless for those 2 hours. At first, when I heard that the movie was going to have a 2-hour runtime, I was like, wait, how much can you do in 2 hours? This is the first movie in the DCU. Surely you need more time than that. But I get it now, because it starts in the middle. And it tells a very self-contained arc about Superman in his early years still figuring out who he is and coming to terms with his identity as Superman. That's where we find ourselves in James Gunn's Superman.
I like that. I think James Gunn is respecting his audience in not having to show and tell and talk about, you know, the alien landing on the farm in Kansas. Ma and Pa can't, who can't have children of their own, raise this baby that they found, and then watch this kid grow up and hide his own superpowers from the other children at the playground. Fuck all of that.
We've seen that 20, 30 times now.
We've seen it 20, 30 times. We've read about it 20,000 times, 30,000 times. If you have a young child who doesn't know that story, congratulations, give him a comic book. He'll be fine.
You have raised him wrong.
I mean, I wouldn't say you've raised him wrong, lah. I'm just saying that if your child is at that age where you're just about to teach them about the ways of the world and DC and Marvel and all that stuff, and you make him watch this movie, yeah, he's not going to know what's happening. But at the same time, he probably won't be able to sit down for very long anyway. But anyway, I digress. I think that is a really interesting decision from James Gunn in that you just jump straight into it. Literally, this movie opens up 3 hours after a battle, right? 3 hours, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes after a battle. Yeah, so you're literally thrown into the deep end. And I love that. To be fair, I think a lot of people will stumble with Mr. Terrific. Maybe even Green Lantern, and maybe even Hawk Girl. But I like that James Gunn doesn't stop the movie so some rando on the street can go, who is that with the hawk wings? Oh, that's Hawk Girl. Did you know she's a Thanagarian? Blah, 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 blah. I don't need that. That's for some other movie. That's for some other TV show, not this one. And I like that James Gunn respected the audience enough to just go, oh, look, there's Hawk Girl. Oh, his name is Mr. Terrific. Oh, that's a Green Lantern. And just go the fuck on.
And of course, he can do that because of all of the heavy lifting that the MCU has done over the last decade, right? In that they've kind of brought superhero movies into the mainstream, so much so that you don't have to give an origin story for each one of these characters. Just know that they have some sort of powers, that they exist in this world to do good, and not all of them have the same motivations, which is apparent in every one of the characters in this movie. I think the other thing that I give James Gunn credit for is that he uses every single one of these characters. And for me, that is a true reflection of a good screenplay. None of these characters are included because they're fan favorites or they're famous in the comics. Jimmy Olsen does stuff. He's in this and he's Jimmy Olsen. He's doing Jimmy Olsen things.
Yeah.
And Lois is doing Lois things. And Ma and Pa Kent are doing Ma and Pa Kent things. And all of the characters have a part to play within the story. And it's really tightly constructed. My one nitpick, and I think the one flaw in the movie, is because there are so many concepts, there are moments of exposition which are necessary for a mass audience, not necessary for those people who read comics, but at the same time, if you're creating pocket universes, etc., there are moments when characters need to explain things to other characters.
I mean, with regards to the pocket universe, I like that the person who was explaining it was a clever person explaining it to someone who was a normie. So it wasn't between two superheroes, right? Which feels stupid. I wouldn't say that was my flaw. I think my big nitpick is that this felt like a safe James Gunn movie. Like he didn't go for a massive swing.
Agreed.
This isn't a massive swing. So in that, when the credits rolled, I felt a little disappointed.
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. I know I said agreed, and now that I think about it, I take it back, because in the world we're currently in, is what he did with Superman the massive swing? Is kindness punk rock? Which is what the movie is trying to say, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that messaging of the movie was strong and fantastic.
But I think the movie on its own, not its themes, but I think the movie felt safe. Again, not a bad thing. But having seen the film, having enjoyed my time in the cinema, like, I don't know how this movie could have been a 10 out of 10. This almost feels like it was designed to be an 8 out of 10 because it's safe. There were no pushing of envelopes. And I get that. I get why James Gunn wouldn't want to, right? This is your first time at bat with the DCU. You're a studio chief now. You're launching Superman, who is beloved by comic book readers who feel that Zack Snyder had messed up the character, but at the same time also has a massive Zack Snyder following. So you kind of have to make sure you just hit the ball and not miss. So in that sense, I get why this isn't a big swing. I get why this is safe.
It is, in many ways, what you kind of have to do after a string of failures.
Yeah. Yes.
It's why they picked Abrams to do The Force Awakens. You needed that comfort after the prequels. And man, have we had garbage Superman movies.
Yes.
It's been so bad that this is what you need to restore the character to its roots. It's been so bad that you have a generation of kids who don't know who or what Superman is and what he stands for.
Yes.
He gets blended in with Batman, and that for me is a real problem. If you want to talk about swings, Zack Snyder took a big swing. It was a colossal failure, in my opinion, because that isn't Superman, but sure, he took a massive swing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
For me,
Yeah.
this felt like everything I want from a Superman movie, from a comic book movie. I mean, this was a Superman movie. He was Superman for 80% of this film. He wasn't Clark. He was barely Clark. I haven't seen that on screen. Like, he is Superman. This is a Superman story. He's doing Superman things. Sure, he's only 3 years into being Superman, and that isn't necessarily something he's become an expert at yet. And I think that works because it adds real character and tension and stakes, which is also something we don't necessarily get from a Superman movie, right?
Yeah.
And in this one, I felt there were times that Superman was in grave danger, and there were times when Superman didn't have all the answers, and when Superman was afraid. And all of that is kind of building towards this idea of exploring Superman's humanity, which, yet again, isn't something that has been done on screen. Even if you take the Christopher Reeve Donner movies, there was never really an exploration of the character. If you take the Donner movies, they were in fact an exploration of how the world reacted to Superman, as opposed to how Superman interacts and reacts with the world. And I think that's where this movie kind of stands apart from every other Superman thing that I have seen. Like, it is truly his story and his place in the world and how he reacts to the world around him, which is very cool. Like, it's a really cool take.
It's a real discussion of who Superman wants to be in the world, right? It's not just an exploration of the character. It's also a question of, and this is in the trailer, when he shows up and when he takes a stand for those who are being oppressed and doing it without permission, doing it without asking for guidance, asking for permission, essentially, right? He isn't a representative of anything other than himself. He is one of the few people on the planet who can say that he can go and fix a problem without needing anybody's permission or help. And that's a big question to ask in the world of this film and also in the world that we currently live in. I like that there are moments where, and I feel like people will have a problem with this, but I like that there are moments where Superman asks for help, where Superman needs assistance. Not a bad thing. Because remember when the first trailer came out and people were mocking him for the whine he made when the dog jumps on him? It's like, ayo, you guys are, how sensitive is your ego that when you watch a, in air quotes, super dash man get jumped on by a dog that you piss on the fact that he whines? Come the fuck on, lah. I like that here he asks for help. There are times when he needs assistance.
It also means that those people have never read a single comic in their life, lah.
I echo your sentiment that this doesn't feel like one issue of a comic book. This feels like a 12-issue run of something.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that there are moments where Superman is emotionally defeated, mentally drained. He isn't all guns going. He isn't always confident, right? There isn't a moment where he has a internal turmoil about whether or not he wants to fire his laser beam at Zod before Zod kills a person, thus him having to also take a life. None of that bullshit. He's contemplative, he is quiet, he is strong, he is a human fucking being.
He is figuring out his humanity.
Yes.
But his morality is cemented. It is absolute.
Yes.
And I think that's what's great about this character, because he's been raised that way.
Yeah.
There's a pivotal moment in the movie, which is a conversation between him and Pa Kent. And you see a small clip of it in the trailer. But that, for me, kind of highlights the morality of this movie and the message of this movie. And I think there is a purpose to the story that this is telling, which is important, which is something we haven't had in a comic book movie or a superhero movie for a long time, because those movies have stopped, in many ways, have stopped exploring what it means to be a superhero, what that does to our world. I mean, Thunderbolts had it a little bit, but they were more intimate stories about individual crises as opposed to the superhero in the world at large. They had kind of drilled it down to the individual level, which is fine because they're over 30 movies in, and that's what you do.
Yeah.
With DC and with Superman, we haven't had that exploration, not with the DCEU for sure. And so with James Gunn's DCU, I'm glad they're going there, because these are the kind of stories that I want to see. I think it's very different from what Marvel is doing. And I think that's important, because we're getting two versions, two distinct universes. And that's cool, because it's not just more of the same with each one trying to ape the other. And it's very clear from this movie that James Gunn has taken a lot of lessons from Marvel's folly as well. In 2025, you don't need to make those same mistakes. You learn from the mistakes that the other guy has done.
Yeah, and I think this isn't a vibe question, right? This isn't a look question. Just because this is brighter doesn't mean it's trying to be Marvel. Because what's more important are the stories that you're trying to tell, right? Zack Snyder goes for vibes. His Justice League films and his superhero movies have been about, we cannot look like Marvel films. And that informs the depression of Batman and the hopelessness of Superman and the utter shambles that was Wonder Woman 1984. Because you're trying to run away from the way something looks, as opposed to the way Gunn is trying to do, in that he's charting his own path. The look is irrelevant, because a Batman movie will be darker than a Superman movie. A Green Lantern TV show will feel different from the cinema universe. So it's okay, right? I like that.
I do. I think the casting is pitch perfect. Everyone was absolutely fantastic. Corran Sweat is my Superman now. It's very clear. He just kind of fits in the role perfectly, as does Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane.
For me, it's Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. You know what it is? Other than Margot Kidder, I've never seen a Lois Lane actually be a fucking journalist.
Like a proper journalist?
Like an actual sort of investigative, hard-hitting journalist. Like, Amy Adams was okay, but her role was literally to be Lois Lane to Superman.
Yes.
Whereas Rachel Brosnahan feels like Lois Lane, a character that is living in a world with a Superman.
And that's what I mean by every character has something to do, which is kind of related to what they're supposed to be.
Yes.
As opposed to filling in the blanks in Superman's universe, right?
Yes, yeah.
I think Nicholas Hoult is a great Lex Luthor. He's a very different Lex Luthor, but Gunn leans into the whole cerebral, conniving, plan upon plan upon plan Lex Luthor, who is also a genius and angry at the world for not acknowledging his true genius and having to work through all of these systems in some weird way, and also just jealous at Superman for getting all of this attention when he should be the deserving one, god damn it. And like all of that stuff is very Lex, and Holt plays it really well, because there are moments in the movie where you're like, yeah, I'd buy that. Like, he's really convincing.
Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor almost feels definitive the way Heath Ledger's Joker was definitive as a villain to a superhero role.
You know why? He's not a cartoon. I think Mark Zuckerberg was a cartoon.
That was a joke. That was complete misread of who the Lex Luthor character is, right? Like, I know what Zack Snyder was trying to do. Zack Snyder was trying to make the villain of the real world, which is a tech bro, the villain of his superhero world, which doesn't work. It doesn't age well. The way what's his name was a villain for a Bond movie, the media mogul.
Oh, Jonathan Pryce in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Or the way Sean Connery was the villain in the Ralph Fiennes, Uma Thurman British
Avengers.
of Avengers, right? He's a weather controlling billionaire villain guy, which, like, I get it. At the time, climate change was a big deal, right? But it doesn't age. Whereas this, Nicholas Hoult, in some ways, I agree with you, but I think people will have a problem with Nicholas Holt's version because there were moments of Gunn funness. Even in Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor's villainy, there were moments where he's being, I don't know about silly is not the word, but when he kept pushing a cup off a table, it felt very cartoony, but it's not wrong.
That's the thing, right? Because by that measure, I don't think current audiences would like Gene Hackman, but Gene Hackman was a great Lex Luthor.
Yes, he was a great fucking Lex Luthor.
And I just love, like, I remember that bit in Superman 2 when he shows up again and Lex is just like, oh, thank God. And Zod is just like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's strange because I'm being very, I feel a little dour on this film because I'm seeing already in my head the kind of tweets and or Instagram posts which I feel will be just written and delivered and championed by stupid fuckheads.
I know, but I think there is no universe in which this movie wasn't going to be divisive. But by that measure, I also feel that this is the first Superman movie that's for everyone. Like, you can take your kids to this and they're going to love Superman again. I don't think any kid, like little kid, who is the target audience for a Superman movie, could watch Man of Steel and walk away feeling inspired at the world. By the end of this movie, and it's a great fucking ending, by the way. I think it's a very James Gunn ending, but a great fucking ending to this movie. But by the end of this movie, you walk away feeling happy with the world. Like, you don't feel angry, hopeless, disappointed. That's not what comic books should make you do or feel.
It's that thing where Halloween this year, you'll see a lot more kids in Superman costumes. Unlike the way
100%.
nobody was dressing up like Henry Cavill Superman.
No, 100%. I think Halloween this year, and for me, that is a great measure of cultural impact.
Yeah.
And I think this is a return to what Superman was. And for that, I am truly thankful. And I'm excited because this is that first movie that kicks everything off. And I think if this is the tone and the mood of the DCU, I'm here for it. And when I say tone and mood, I don't just mean a colorful, bright Superman. I mean something that truly embraces comic books. And yet again, not alienating though. Let's be fair, the Donner movies really embraced the comic books. The Donner movies, I don't think could be made today. You can't have a Superman movie where there is no Superman for the first, 45 minutes of the film? It's all on Krypton, and then he's a kid on a farm, and it's like Marlon Brando's movie for the whole first bit. And I don't think you can make that movie now.
As much as it wasn't a great movie, I think the Brandon Routh Superman,
I agree,
at least tried.
Yet again, the Brandon Routh Superman felt like someone going, listen, we have those 4 Superman movies. Let's talk about what happens next. And I think that's really interesting. But Bryan Singer decided to go places with it, and not everything worked.
I think, like, as much as people knock that movie, and which is wholly entirely Bryan Singer's fault, I also give him credit for being that Superman. I give Bryan Singer credit in bringing that Superman back. And I think the failure of that many years later also helped Snyder's argument for making his version of Superman. Which is, sure, right? Like, in the way of the world, I get it.
And we've come full circle. The pendulum has swung the other way, whatever metaphor you want to use next. But with James Gunn's Superman, and I think with what Karn Sweat brings to the character, there is a real gosh golly quality that
Yeah.
I mean, he actually says the fucking word golly at one point, and I was like, oh yeah, this is great. And that is a quality that I appreciate. He is the original Boy Scout. Everyone else is kind of making fun of him for being
Yes.
that Boy Scout. Everyone from Guy Gardner to Lois Lane, and no one can accept that because they're bound by the cynicism of this world, and he is not.
Yes.
And I think that is a message and a theme that I totally buy.
Not only buy, but that's the message and the theme that I want. I want to see this hopeful, gosh darn it, lady Superman from Boondock, Kansas, meet the cynical billionaire Bruce Wayne from Gotham City. That is why those comics were very good, because you had this opposite views of humanity and what it means to be human. When Bruce Wayne says everybody's just waiting to shiv you and take your wallet, where Superman is saying a squirrel is worth saving.
There is a great line from Lois to Superman about how, she's punk rock and she questions everything, and she was raised to do that. And he trusts everything and sees beauty in everything. And I think that is a perfect depiction of who Superman is, or rather who I want Superman to be, because he is that outlier.
What's important. That's who you want Superman to be. You don't want Superman to be
like me.
Not only that, but you don't want Superman to be another shade of Bruce Wayne.
Correct. He's got to be the opposite.
He's got to be the opposite, right? They're both good guys. You don't need a Martha situation. Fuck you, right? You don't.
Also, can I say, my favorite depictions of Ma and Pa Kent to date, if only because they actually look and sound like farmers. For me, they sound like the people who are so different and out of Metropolis that they would raise someone like this.
Yes. I love how Ma Kent, at one point, Ma Kent comes out of the house and says, Clark, there's something on the box I think you need to see. Like, she doesn't say TV, she just says the box, because that's what they know it as, right? I love it. I do have one other nitpick, and this is a character thing. I felt Mr. Terrific didn't match my comic Mr. Terrific.
Oh, yes. Because this one feels like it's more in line with the Tom King Mr. Terrific from the Strange Adventures comic run that he did recently.
Yeah, I guess.
As opposed to the Mr. Terrific that we saw in the Arrowverse.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the Arrowverse. I refuse to acknowledge the Arrowverse. I refuse to acknowledge it once they did what they did with Green Lantern. At that point, I was like, this is bullshit. Fuck you guys. Y'all can go to hell. No, my Mr. Terrific was a little more quieter. He's a little more reserved. He doesn't show emotion. There are moments here where they try to do the I don't react to things Mr. Terrific. But at the same time, there was also him being a little gunny. A little too James Gunn character, Mr. Terrific.
You could see James Gunn struggling against his own instincts.
Yes.
In this film, for sure.
Yes.
Because there are only 2 needle drops. And I have to say, the needle drops worked incredibly well.
Yeah.
There is a fight sequence with a needle drop and a needle drop at the very end of the movie, which also just played to the emotions of that ending. And I loved both of those needle drops. But you could tell that this wasn't your everyday James Gunn movie. And he too was trying something different.
Yes. Yeah. Which worked. I thought it worked.
I did too. I think he did a very good job in that sense. But you're right. I think Mr. Terrific is slightly different. Could it also be because Mr. Terrific is at the beginning of his career too? Like, all of them seem to be, with the exception of Guy Gardner, who is slightly older and has seemingly been a Green Lantern for quite a while now. Like, he seems to know the ropes, and he's like, I don't want to interfere in politics, and that's not what I do, etc., etc. So maybe that's part of the early stages of the character. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I liked Eddie Gategas as Mr. Terrific. I just felt like he was a different Mr. Terrific than I recognize. That's all. There weren't a lot of moments of emotion from Mr. Terrific, and that's fine.
In many ways, what you expect from this movie as being a spiritual successor to the Donner films is real. That is kind of what you get with this movie. There are plenty of homages to the Superman movies gone by. There are plenty of Easter eggs on that front. I think James Gunn has kind of crafted a very standalone superhero movie. There is probably one major setup for the DC universe, but that's about it. That too is a rarity in this age of superhero blockbusters, and I appreciate that because this movie feels very self-contained.
I also appreciate that little Easter egg isn't linking to something that's ambiguous. It isn't linking to something that is, amorphous. We know it's happening. It's being shot right now. It's happening. It's okay. It's not a surprise. The surprise is the Easter egg in this film.
Because one of our biggest criticisms of the Marvel post-credit tag is that a lot of the time it leads nowhere.
Yeah.
And it may never happen. Like, will we ever see Harry Styles again? Probably not. Will we ever see Blade? Probably not.
Fuck Harry Styles. Will we ever see Kit Harington again? Definitely not.
Unlikely.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, he's done a very good job in kind of setting up the DCU, crafting a standalone film, giving people Superman and making Superman Superman again.
Yep.
It is a movie I'm definitely going to watch again because I still feel like I missed quite a bit. It was like an F1 situation. The movie looked beautiful as well. And a lot of the time I was just looking around the screen going, ooh, look at that.
Yeah.
And ooh, look at that. And ooh, there's an Easter egg. And so I'd like to watch it again with a clear mind and just take in the movie for what it is. But I had an absolute blast. And for me, this is a great start to the DCU.
Yep, agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's made me excited about DC movies again.
Lanterns next.
Yeah. James Gunn's Superman opens in Malaysian cinemas this Thursday, July 10th. Go watch it. It's really good. Let us know what you think once you do. You know how to reach out. We're on Instagram on GogglerMY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.